On March 16th, Campus Current visited ULTA Beauty as Zach Tennant, an AACC student, talked about how photography classes at the college helped inspire his career.
Really big projects throughout the semester, so I've only been able to handle one photo class at a time. And that's usually as many as they let run at a time, so that people don't overload themselves anyway. So this semester I'm in studio lighting, which runs on Fridays. It's like a 4-hour long class
Oh my God.
because we do all of the work in class because that's where all the lighting equipment is.
Right.
So we use the school's equipment, we set it all up in the classroom in the Cade building, and then we have a couple hours to use it, work on our projects, and then we pack it all up and put it back at the end of the day.
Great.
So that goes all the way until like 3:30 in the afternoon.
Oh my gosh.
So it very much limits what I can do on Fridays.
Right. So how did your eye for photography translate into makeup?
So because I've gone to like art school and such, I mean I wouldn't say AACC is like an art school, but because I've like taken art classes and whatnot, I have a general understanding for the elements of art and principles of design and whatnot, and what goes into producing art, and how to like refine that. And I've been able to use some of those skills in doing makeup by, instead of looking at somebody's face and thinking of it as a face, I can think of it as shapes and really use that to my advantage to make sure I'm not getting psyched out over what an eyebrow is supposed to look like, for example, rather than what I see on somebody's face. So if I get in my head about what an eyebrow is supposed to look like, I can kind of fudge it up a little bit and it'll kind of start to look funny. But if I look at an eyebrow instead of looking at it as like two shapes, when I look at an eyebrow, I see two shapes. I see a triangle as the tail, and then I see like a rectangle as the front of the brow. And that really helps me work on clients' eyebrows. Because everyone now, especially in this day and age, they're really picky about how their eyebrows are, because eyebrows are very in right now. So when I look at a client's eyebrow as two shapes instead of looking at it as a person's eyebrow, I can really hone in on what to make it look like and how a person generally likes their eyebrows to be filled in.
Right.
But it's not just about shapes with the face shapes, it's also about color. In art classes, we learn a lot about color theory, and because of color theory, I'm really able to understand what colors work best with what other colors and what complements, or what also contrasts with other colors. Like when clients want a little bit of eyeshadow, but they don't want it to be super, super bright and pigmented, but they like their eyes to be stand out, but they don't like to have a huge like smoky eye on or something.
Right.
I can just give the eye a nice wash of color that contrasts with their eye color. So like reds and greens are opposites on the color wheel. So if somebody has green eyes, I can take a little bit of shadow that has red undertones, because a bright red shadow would be way too bold and dramatic for somebody who doesn't like to wear a lot of eyeshadow. So I would take something along the lines of like a plum or a cranberry or soft pink kind of color, and that'll really make somebody's green eyes stand out a lot more. Or on the other end of the spectrum, on the other end of the spectrum, if somebody has blue eyes, I can use shadows that are more in the warm tones, like oranges or warm browns or something like that, to help blue eyes be contrasted with the orange on the color wheel. So it's a lot of color theory and a lot of shapes that I can pay attention to on the face, and it really helps me get in touch with a client's face and what they like their features to be represented as when they wear makeup.
Great.
So I've just done a little bit of concealer on you. Look out for me so I can blend that all over the concealer. Eyes up. Yep, just like that. Just going to tickle a little bit just so I can get that concealer right up into those under eyes. And then I'm just going to set up with some powder so you can stay and not move along and crease and whatnot. And along with doing makeup, a lot of it comes from like the skin underneath. So I really like to understand somebody's skin underneath to really understand how their skin is going to react to certain products and what kind of products are going to work best for what skin types. Um, so um, I'm super into skincare as well as makeup. It's not going to like get patchy at all because when you try to put a like a colored powder on top of a base that's still a little bit wet, you got to be really careful with it and not like rub it super hard, or else it'll start to like kind of pick up the foundation or any liquid product that you put underneath of it. So generally, just to be safe, I like to use a little bit of face powder, like powder that is kind of skin tone, just in those regions where I like to put blush, bronzer, and highlight to make sure when I go and start blending that in, it doesn't start to pick up the foundation. Right. I'm going to start working on a little bronzer here.
Keep my eyes closed.
You don't have
I
to.
never know like what to do.
You don't have to. You can if you want. A lot of people think it's more relaxing. Some people like to like sit there and doze off. And when I first started doing a little bit of makeup, I was very similar to Kinsey, actually. I was just doing a little bit of BB cream and whatnot when I was in high school. I first got the idea that anyone can wear makeup because I was involved in theater in high school. So I wasn't on stage, I wasn't a performer, but I was doing tech and whatnot, but I was very close friends with all the actors. So I would hang out with them while they were getting ready backstage. And I saw the male actors putting on makeup, and I saw how good it made their skin look. So I was like, okay, maybe that's something I can try out. So without like wanting to go out and buy my own stuff and not know what I'm buying or what it's going to do and whatnot, like knowing very little, I just kind of like went into my mom's room, grabbed some like the little bit of tinted moisturizer that she used, and kind of like tried it on. Granted, it was a very much darker shade than I was because my mom goes tanning and she has different genetics than I do because I have more of my dad's genetics on the Irish side, but my mom's more on like the Polish German side, so she gets a little tan. So I looked like very orange, but it at least still like kind of made my skin look nice, like texture wise, and covered up my blemishes. So I liked that. And at the time, my aunt, my mom's sister, also sold for Mary Kay. So she had some products laying around. So when I mentioned to her that I was interested in trying out some products, she gave me a couple things to try out, like little samples of whatnot. So I was trying those out, and they were actually like catered to my shade and whatnot, so they looked nice. Then eventually samples ran out, so I actually like went up to my mom and like asked her to take me over to the drugstore and pick out some products. And we were with my sister and my sister's friend, who was also like kind of into makeup as well. So my younger sister's friend, who's like 3 years younger than me, was actually helping me in the store pick out products that we had heard decent things about. So at first, my family wasn't super into the idea. Like, my sisters and my siblings didn't care because we're all in like the younger generation that doesn't really care what other people do as long as it's not hurting anybody. My mom was very confused about it. She had all these like questions of whether I was trans, like if I wanted to transition into being a female, or if I was doing drag and whatnot. So it did take some time to explain to her the difference between doing drag and wearing makeup casually, and wearing makeup casually and also wanting to transition into the female gender, which she didn't quite understand that I was happy being male and that I just wanted to wear makeup casually and not be like a super like hyper feminine drag style makeup. so it did take some time for her to understand. And she was the one who I really needed to like convince because I live with my mom and my parents are separated. So I don't see my dad that often, and he's only seen me wear makeup a couple times, which it's still kind of awkward when he does see it because he's not super keen on the idea. He's like the kind of person that's super into like the more masculine gender roles, where boys have to be like hardworking men and play sports and all of those things that society deems as more masculine. And growing up, he wouldn't even let me touch anything the color pink, basically. So that's the kind of person he is, so he's still not super keen on the idea. But he doesn't say anything, thankfully. He doesn't cause any drama about it, which I'm glad, because I would not want to have to deal with that every time I saw him. But if I do see him wearing makeup, he still like kind of is put off by it, I guess you would say. But he doesn't speak badly about it in any way. Friends, like I said, with my siblings, we're all in the same generation where we don't really care what other people do. I do my friends' makeup all the time. I do it when we go out for like just to have fun and whatnot. Going out to eat, going out to concerts, stuff like that. They always like having me do their makeup because they know that I would do it better than they would because I've like been in this area of study for so long, and they're not super into like the whole thing, but they still like to make it look good. So they ask me to do things for them, and I don't mind doing it at all. I actually have a lot of fun doing it. And distant family, I've had a couple of my aunts come in and want to get their makeup done. So they're all super chill about it. I think the main thing was just my parents. I was a sound equipment guy for 2 shows back in 2016 and 2017. I did In Love and Warcraft in the fall there, and then I did Addams Family the musical in the spring there. But I wasn't involved in the makeup at all. We had other people that were specific like makeup designers, because at the time I wasn't like studying makeup as an art form. I was just studying it to like kind of make it look nice. And I wasn't really doing it on other people. I was really only doing it on myself at the time. But at the time I was only working at like a frozen yogurt store. So I only wore makeup on myself and didn't really do it on other people unless I wanted to like play around with it for a photo shoot or something. And then through a theater at ACC actually is where I met one of my friends who used to work here, and she's the one who actually helped me get the job here, where I became just like a regular beauty advisor. And then from there I worked my way up to a Mac artist. So I owe it to my friend Sam, who helped me get the job here to help me build up to where I am and get all this other knowledge that I've built from all my other coworkers here.
Awesome.
Because a lot of makeup artistry is just learning from other makeup artists. Like, there's no right and wrong rules on way to do things. It's just learning all the different techniques that work for different people of different skin types, different colors, different skin tones. So it's all learning from each other and learning from each other's experiences that really helps us grow as artists, I would say.
Awesome.
We're going to start on the eyes. I'm going to start with the Pro Longwear Paint Pot in the shade Soft Ochre, just to prime the eyes. I love these guys. These things are basically like full coverage cream eyeshadows that on days that I don't wear eyeshadow like this, I use these as foundation for my eyes. Because if you try to go in with foundation or concealer on your eyelids, sometimes it'll not set down all the way and kind of like fold up in the crease of your eye. Which can look a little kind of dingy. So these guys, even when you don't wear eyeshadow, they're not going to fold up because they dry down. They dry down to a nice creamy matte finish. And they wear all day long without touching them up at all. These palettes are catered by MAC artists that use these shades a lot as well. So they know what shades go really well together because they're the ones who use these guys all the time on professional work, like backstage fashion shows. Mac does a lot of that stuff. Like they go all over the world for the big name fashion shows, like London, New York. I think they're working on now. I think they do Milan Fashion Week as well. That's another kind of one of my career goals, is to work as one of those like Mac senior artists that go around the world with the brand and are able to work on these like super high upscale fashion shows.
Awesome. So how do you feel like your life has changed since the day that you started putting on makeup?
So it's definitely affected the way people view me. So as a gay male, we like to say that our community is very inclusive, but sometimes it's actually quite the opposite about it. I've had some guys that I've talked to in the past and like gone on dates with that I mentioned the fact to them that I am a makeup artist, or I do makeup as a hobby or whatnot. And they've been like super turned off by the idea, because for some reason, don't ask me why, there's still like a huge negative connotation with being even the little ounce of feminine in the like gay dating community. So a lot of guys, you'll see on a lot of like online dating profiles, they'll have in their descriptions that they're not interested in femme guys, or they'll say they're only interested in masculine guys, and stuff like that, which kind of like frustrates me a lot, because all they're doing is just like judging somebody by what they see on a dating profile. You can't really tell whether a person's masculine or feminine or anywhere in between just off of the dating profile. You can kind of get an idea, but you really can't tell until you like actually hang out with them and whatnot. So that kind of bugs me. Even sometimes on my way to work, I'll be driving in my car and at a stoplight or something, and the person next to me at the stoplight will look over and see that I'm a guy in a full face of makeup coming to work, and they will like do like one of those like double takes at me. Those kind of interactions I find funny, because I like to see people's reactions when they see me, because I'm definitely not what you would expect to see on your everyday basis, because guys wearing makeup is still not super like normalized in today's society. Still very frowned upon in some places, actually. Thankfully, Annapolis is like one of the more like progressive areas of the country. But if we were somewhere, say down south, they would probably not be as cool about it, and probably definitely have some choice words to say. So I'm thankful to be up here. But yeah, people have definitely looked at me funny because of wearing makeup out in public.
So who are some of your inspirations?
I really like a lot of Mac senior artists. I really like, I don't know his full name, but his Instagram handle is Dominic MUA. He's one of the Mac senior artists. He's really talented. I'm actually doing a photo project right now in my studio class based on him, where currently he's working on Fashion Week, and he's one of the backstage artists. He's been taking photos on his Instagram and posting photos of his workstation and all the products laid out and whatnot, but like kind of like the aftermath of super like rush doing makeup behind backstage and whatnot to try to get the models out as soon as possible. So the stations always look kind of a mess because they're always in a hurry and don't have time to work, make sure everything's nice and clean. And I'm kind of emulating that in a still life for my photo project, where I've been just kind of making products looked all used and kind of messed up and whatnot, laid out on a table to make it look like those kind of photos, but with like studio lighting and whatnot to show the techniques that I've been learning in the class.
Awesome.
Other than that, there's a couple other artists that I really like online. I follow a lot of like the major beauty influencers on YouTube and whatnot, like James Charles, Nick Tutorials, those kind of people. I really like Tati, Glam Life Guru on YouTube. I look to her for a lot of product reviews because she's very knowledgeable in what she does. A lot of these people are very knowledgeable because they start off as just like regular makeup artists, just doing makeup on themselves and other clients, but they also build up to kind of making their own cosmetics brands as well sometimes. So a lot of them really know what goes into making products and what makes products work well and what doesn't. So they can really get educated on what ingredients go into products and really know what works. So I looked at them a lot for product advice and what to use on what skin type and whatnot like that. I'm just going to take a little bit of a warm brown eyeliner and just use
And the light was horrible. By the time I got in my car, I was like, oh my god.
flat brush, just smudge it out and soften it. So it's not that much line, like a kind of like a subtle smoked outline, which I'm really into. I often find myself getting like sucked into little trends, like I wouldn't say trends like the trends that you see on Instagram, but like trends that you would see on like Fashion Week and stuff like that. Because I'm not one of those like Instagram makeup artists that does like super high glam cut crease, like 18,000 different eyeshadows on one eye kind of person. I can be sometimes when I'm like feeling really like adventurous, but I'm more along the lines of like one of those like fashion-y makeup artists that sometimes delves into like the more avant-garde style makeup that you would see for like the super expensive runways and stuff like that, or like just makeup artistry in general, where it's just meant for taking a photo and posting it online or and whatnot, and then just washing it off right after that. Because a lot of those things, you can certainly wear them out in public if you want, but they're not considered like the wearable kind of look. But I like to pick and choose different techniques from those, different styles, and kind of mesh them all together to kind of create my own style. Where I like this kind of blown out eye with a little bit of eyeliner. I'm not super into like the hard like graphic kind of winged liner kind of feel. I've never been into that trend, so I'm more into like the kind of smoked out kind of liner that just defines the lashes. Work. So I can't come into work without any makeup on and then try to use all the products here and then put makeup on. We're expected to come in with our makeup already on. Especially as MAC artists, we have to we have like a lot of certain standards that we have to uphold in our own appearance. We're allowed to express ourselves with makeup however we want, but we do have like a certain amount of product that we're supposed to be wearing every day. So it's important that we have all these products at our own disposal. So I've definitely had a huge range of clients. I've had clients that have come to me with very like emotional stories that have like almost brought me to tears while I'm doing their makeup because of the battles that they've struggled and how working with a makeup artist like myself has been able to help them boost their confidence a lot. I've had people, this one time I had somebody who wasn't even like an actual like client of mine that came in. It was just somebody who came in on a limb just looking to cover up a scar on their face from something that happened in their life. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a quite large divot in their cheek that was taken out from whatever happened. and it had a lot of scar tissue around it that was discolored. So they came to me wondering if there was anything that they could do to kind of cover that up. So I was able to actually cover it up completely with some of the products that we have. And I will never forget the moment that I covered it up and turned them in their chair to look at the mirror, and their face lit up. And I was about to cry in that moment because of how happy they looked.
Aww.
But me, especially with my eyes that already start to get watery no matter what, I have to really make sure I don't start crying in any way, shape, or form, whether it's just like a natural response to my eye being irritated or something, because everything will get ruined. The now a more lifted appearance, which is really nice and almost editorial-esque, but still very natural and glowy. And then I also take a little bit right in the inner corner because that'll really highlight the eyes. Their own products, which is something that MAC does, where instead of just getting your makeup done and paying for the service getting done, you're also getting product to take home with you and a lot of knowledge to take home with you to apply to that product that you're buying, which is one of my favorite things about MAC. You're not only getting that experience of getting it put on, you're also getting all the knowledge that you can use yourself. She was actually my first client that came in that I worked on when I first became a MAC artist, because I just recently moved up into MAC this past summer, back in August. Thank you. So my first client was actually from England, and she was in town for a wedding of hers. And she was super, super sweet the entire time. I'm usually always nervous around the older generation because of how, like, kind of not used to the idea of guys doing makeup as they are. So I'm very cautious about it. But a lot of the clients that I've had have been very, very chill and actually very welcoming to me as a male makeup artist, which I'm very thankful for. And she was very, very happy to have me as her artist. She had told me that she had gotten her makeup done many, many times throughout the years for many different kinds of events. And at the end, she told me that I was her absolute favorite, that I was her absolute favorite makeup artist she's ever had do her makeup because of how in-depth I was with everything and how I went through and talked a lot about the techniques I used and how I use them and what tools to use. When I'm doing lessons and such, I'm very, very in-depth because teaching is another one of my favorite things to do. Before I started doing makeup and whatnot, I was actually looking into being an art teacher for high school. So that's kind of what I was wanting to do for a little while there. But then I got into makeup and realized I wanted to be more on the hands-on, like doing kind of thing other than teaching. And teaching is something that I can always do on the side as like a mentor. But she told me that I was her favorite person to ever have done her makeup. I think she said she was in her 60s, and she's done her makeup a couple times, pretty much every year. So she's gotten her makeup done a lot of different places, and it really touched me to hear that after all the times she's gotten her makeup done, that I was her favorite, even though it was like my first time actually doing it on somebody in a real like MAC situation. So that really touched me, and I actually had to like take a moment to myself after she had left and like go hide in the back to make sure that I didn't mess up my makeup from crying and whatnot. So that is something that I'll hold with me throughout my entire journey as a makeup artist. I've also done a lot of really fun clients. like on Halloween this past year, I had somebody come in who wanted a Day of the Dead kind of skull look. That was a lot of fun because that's not something that I get to do a lot, and I do like to venture out into like the more like really artistic side of makeup, where I just sit a client down and use their face as a canvas to just paint away. And do like a bunch of different techniques that aren't considered wearable, but are still considered art, which I really love to do. I had one client recently, actually, who was a very, very eccentric older lady. And when I first sat her down, much with all my other clients, I like to get to know how they like their makeup done and what they're looking to get out of the service and whatnot. And she was having troubles finding the right words to express how she wanted her makeup done. So the only thing she could say was she wanted her makeup to look like her husband wanted to get into bed with her. But those weren't the words she used. So that's one of my favorite stories to tell. That matches your eyes really well, but doesn't draw the attention away from them.
Oh my god, I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that is pretty much the finished product. I'm just going to set your face again one more time. Give you that nice coconut smell. And then I'm also going to venture out into another brand again, because as much as I love MAC Fix Plus, it's not essentially meant for making your makeup last longer. It's actually originated as a skincare product. Back when it first came out, it originated as a skincare hydrating facial mist, but then people started using it as a makeup setting spray as well, which it works as a setting spray. It helps everything set in place and kind of melts into the skin more, but it doesn't do much for keeping the makeup on longer. So that's when I usually bring out the Urban Decay All Nighter, which is really, really good. I call this stuff hairspray for your face because it just locks everything in and makes sure it's not going to budge throughout the entire day.
Zach is a very artistic person. He does things a lot with his guests that are very unique to him and very like creative, and I think he likes the makeup application aspect of what he does because it kind of lets his artistic abilities come out, and most of his clients give him a little bit of leeway with what he does so that he can kind of be more creative with stuff, so I think that's good for him. And then of course he's just a really good team player. He's always helping us with the store stuff, even if it's unrelated to Mac. So he's just a very artistic, creative, but also just a really good, hardworking person too.
Great.
America's Next Top Model, unlike